Welcome to the GMAT Strategy Podcast. You're here because you believe there's a better way to study for the GMAT, and so do we. We created the GMAT strategy to maximize your results and minimize your effort so you can get to the fun parts about business school and life as quickly as possible. My name is Isaac Puglia, and I've been teaching GMAT classes and tutoring privately for the GMAT for almost a decade, and I've achieved a 99th percentile score on the GMAT and helped thousands of students get into the business schools of their choice. I'm excited to be a part of your MBA journey since we all at TGS think our world can benefit from the best possible business leaders that we can find. If this show is bringing you value, please share it with your friends and family who are studying so that together we can make this process as easy and as painless as it can possibly be. Let's go.
Welcome to Lesson 13 of GMAT Math Basics. Today, we're going to answer one key question, which is how do you multiply decimals under time pressure without a calculator? Great news, just like decimal addition and subtraction, we're going to follow all the same rules of long multiplication for integers. And if you're not sure how to do that, that's lesson 8 of this series. But there's an essential adjustment to make when we're multiplying decimals, and that might not make a lot of sense until we recap the entire long multiplication process. So, quick quiz for you. What are the steps to long multiplication? See if you can recall how it works. The first step is to stack the numbers. And remember that any order is okay with multiplication and addition. So you can stack the larger number on top, or you can stack the smaller number on top. It's up to you. I like to keep the smaller number on the bottom just for convention. Keeps things consistent for me and makes me less error prone, but ultimately it is your decision. When we say stack, we mean align the place values of both numbers. Units digit on top of units digit, tens digit on top of tens digit, etc. Step 2 is we multiply the units digit of the bottom number by each digit of the top number. Then we multiply the tens digit of the bottom number by each digit of the top number, and we repeat that for every digit in the bottom number. As you shift from digit to digit in the bottom number, you're going to put the result in a new row at the very bottom of your work. And finally, we will use long addition to add up all those rows to get your final result. Again, just head back to lesson 8 if you're at all confused or you feel that you could use a little bit of refresher on the basics of long multiplication. With that in mind, we can cover the point that's necessary for adapting this technique to decimal values. Now, we'll talk about carrying a little bit later. If you don't recall exactly what that is, you might need to carry at certain steps. But the additional thing that you want to remember for long multiplication with decimals is that you're actually going to ignore the decimal places when you are initially multiplying. That can be a little bit weird the first few times you do it. I'll walk you through a couple of examples so that you can get comfortable with this. But what you'll do is after you ignore them and do the long multiplication process as if both numbers were integers, then we will add those decimal points back in at the end of the process after multiplying the numbers without the decimal places. Let me illustrate what I mean. Let's say we want to multiply 1.23 or 1 and 23 hundredths times 3.21 or 3 and 21 hundredths. So that's just 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1 if you're on the audio feed, okay? Trying to make this as easy as possible to visualize. Now we begin as our first step by ignoring the decimal places. So instead of 1.23, we're going to treat that like the number 123, 123. We'll do exactly the same thing with 3.21. We're going to ignore the decimal places and treat it like 321. Then we're going to go through our steps of long multiplication. Now I'm going to go a little bit faster through this because I'm going to assume that you're familiar with the basic steps than I did in the initial lesson. So the first step is we stack 3, 2, 1 right on top of 1, 2, 3. And at this point, we'll just do our regular long multiplication process. So we're going to have the 1 from 321 right above the 3 from 123. And then I like to draw a line right below those numbers to separate out the result area. Now, because we ignored the decimal places, we just treat the digit to the far right of each number as the unit's digit. So we will multiply the 3 from 123 times the 1 from 321. That's just multiplying both units' digits together. That yields 3. And as usual, we'll write that at the bottom of the units digit column in the result area below the result line. Then we multiply the 3 from 123 times the 2 from 321. That's 6. We write that at the bottom of the tens digit column. Then you multiply the 3 from 123 times the 3 from 321. That's 9. We write that at the bottom of the hundreds digit column. So all we're doing here is we're taking the units digit at the bottom number and multiplying it by every digit in the top number. That gives us the first line or top line of our result. Now we'll do the same thing with the tens digit at the bottom number. But you might recall that you're going to want to write a 0 at the bottom of the units digit column in a new row below the result that we just got. And every time you shift to the left in the bottom number, you're going to add an additional 0 to the right of the result area. I'll talk more about that in a moment. Once we've got that 0 in the units digit at the bottom of the units digit column, then we multiply the 2 from 123 times the 1 from 321. We write that result at the bottom of the tens digit column since we already put a 0 in the units digit column. 2 times 1 is 2, so write that at the bottom of the tens digit column. Then multiply the 2 from 123 times the 2 from 321. 2 times 2 is 4. We write that at the bottom of the hundreds digit column. Next, we multiply the 2 from 123 times the 3 from 321. 2 times 3 is 6. We write that at the bottom of the thousands digit column. So now we've multiplied every digit in the top number by the tens digit of the bottom number. Now we will repeat that with the hundreds digit of the bottom number. But before we multiply all of the digits by 1 from 123, we'll write 2 zeros in a new row below the row that we just generated. One of those zeros will go at the bottom of the units digit column, and then the other 0 will go at the bottom of the tens digit column. So if you recall from the previous lesson on long multiplication, we're going to add a new row at the bottom of the result and an additional 0 to the right each time you multiply by a new digit in the bottom number. So again, in our case, we're adding 2 zeros to the right of a new row because we're multiplying each digit in the top number by the hundreds digit of the bottom number, which means we've already covered the units and the tens digits. That's why we have 2 zeros at the bottom of the result area. So at that point, we can now multiply the 1 from 123 times the 1 from 321. 1 times 1 is 1. So we'll write that at the bottom of the hundreds digit column. Then we multiply the 1 from 123 times the 2 from 321. 1 times 2 is 2. So we write that at the bottom of the thousands digit column. Finally, we multiply the 1 from 123 by the 3 from 321. 1 times 3 is 3. So we write that at the bottom of the 10,000s digit column. And that's that. Now, I know this is kind of a lot if you're just on audio, but what you might want to do is go back and when you have the opportunity to write all this out on a piece of scrap paper, if this is a growth area for you, something you feel that you could improve with, then I highly recommend listening to this as you're working it out on paper. That'll help a ton in terms of integrating all this stuff. But I know a lot of you are on the go, so just do your best to visualize as we go here. Now, at this point, we're going to sum each column in the result area, and I'm just going to spare you that math because we already did a round of that in the long multiplication episode, which again is episode 8. But the result of our multiplication that we just did is 39,483. So just imagine we did a bunch of long addition there. 39483 is what we get as our end result. So just to recap, we ignored the decimal places at the beginning. We multiplied the two numbers as if they were integers with no decimal places. and we got the result 39,483. Now what we're going to do is add the decimal places back in that we ignored at the start. Recall that we began with 1.23 and 3.21. So we ignored 4 total decimal places, 2 from each number. 0.23 is 2 decimal places we ignored from 1.23. 0.21 is 2 decimal places we ignored from 3.21. All you're doing is counting 1 decimal place for each number to the right of the decimal in each number. So what that means is we take the decimal point that would be at the end of 39,483. It would be right to the right of the 3, and we shift that decimal place over 4 places to the left. That's quote unquote adding the decimal places back in that we ignored at the beginning. Now, if you move that decimal place over 4 places to the left, then that's going to yield 3.9483. And you'll notice there's 4 numbers after the decimal point in 3.9483 to account for the 4 decimal places that we ignored at the beginning of our multiplication. So that's the key difference between long multiplication with integers and long multiplication with decimals. First, you ignore the decimal places, then you add those decimal places back in after performing the long multiplication on the values as if they were integers. That's that. Let's do one more example so you can be rock solid with this. And I also want to cover a couple edge cases that can happen. So let's do something that might seem a little bit strange. Let's do 4.32, or just 432, times 0.0005. So that's 5 with 3 zeros in front of it, and then a decimal place. So it's a very small number, 0.0005. First, we ignore the decimal places. Note that here we're ignoring 6 total decimal places, 2 decimal places from 4.32 and 4 decimal places from 0.0005. If we ignore those decimal places, we're left with 2 integers, 432 and then 5 by itself. Now what we'll do is just perform regular long multiplication on those integers. Let's start by stacking. 432 on top, and then a 5 right below the 2, and then a result line, horizontal line below those 2 numbers. Now what we do is just multiply each digit of the bottom number by each digit of the top number. Begin by multiplying by the units digit of the bottom number through every digit of the top number. That's nice in this case because there's only 1 digit in the bottom number. So our first move then is to multiply the 5, which is the whole bottom number, times the 2 in 432. 5 times 2 is 10. So now we're going to do some carrying because we're going to get a 2-digit result. We put the 0 from 10 at the bottom of the units digit column, and then we carry the 1 from 10 to the top of the column to the left. If you recall how to carry, you'll remember that we'll add this 1 to the next product that we're about to get. Let's generate that product by multiplying 5, the bottom number, times the 3 in 432. 5 times 3 is 15, but we will then add the 1 that we just carried from the previous step to make it 16. Then we bring the 6 from 16 down to the bottom of the column that we're working in this case, the tens digit column. And then we're going to carry the 1 from 16 to the top of the column to the left, which is the hundreds digit column. Then we'll make a similar move to what we just made. We'll multiply the 5, which is the whole bottom number, times the 4 in 432. 5 times 4 is 20, but then we add the 1 that we just carried from the previous step. So that makes 21. There's no more digits to carry to, so we just write 21 at the bottom of the result column with the 1 in the hundreds place and the 2 in the thousands place. Because there's no more digits in the bottom number, we're done multiplying at that point. And the result of 432 times 5 is 2,160, 2160. So there's just 1 row there. We don't need to sum any additional rows because there was only 1 digit in the bottom number. But recall, we ignored 6 decimal places at the start of our operation. So we now shift the decimal point in the integer 2160, which normally would be right to the right of 0. We shift that 6 places to the left. What you might notice is that after shifting the decimal places 4 places to the left, we've got 0.216. So ask yourself, what do we do if we need to shift it 2 more places to the left? Might have been a while since you've done this, but what you're doing is you're just going to add zeros to the right of the decimal, but to the left of the numerical values. So to shift the decimal point 2 more places to the left from 0.216, we would end up with 0.00216. And that's the result of 4.32 times 0.0005. So did my best to wrap a few concepts up in that last example. Number one, a reminder of how to carry. Again, check out lesson 8 if you want more examples of that or instructions on how that works. 2, we had an interesting example of ignoring decimal places in 0.0005. Just so you don't have to second guess yourself, it's totally fine to just ignore those 4 decimal places and make it the integer 5. Sometimes that can be a little bit weird the first time you do it. Third thing that was wrapped up in that example is what to do if you need to shift the decimal places further than a numerical digit, which is just adding zeros to the right of the decimal, but to the left of the numerical digit. So in 0.216, if I need to shift the decimal place 2 more places to the left, I just squeeze 2 zeros in between the decimal and the 2, and that gets me 0.00216. That's pretty much everything that you could encounter when doing long multiplication with decimals. With that, you should be good to go. And I'll give the same tip as I gave in the previous lesson, which is if you want more practice, a great large language model prompt is generate 10 decimal long multiplication problems. That will help me improve my GMAT score. Definitely don't need to do it word for word. But something in that vein should work out well. Then you can also ask the large language model or the GPT or whatever you like to use to explain each one if you want to check your skills. That's all for now. We'll be back soon with a lesson for best practices on dividing by decimals on the GMAT and then on to more advanced topics. And I'm looking forward to it. As always, my greatest hope is that this material will make your studies as easy and as painless as they can possibly be. If you want more tips and strategies for optimizing your performance on the GMAT, please head to our website, thegmatstrategy.com, which is linked in the description of this content. If you don't want to type it in, you can just click that link and check out our free video on how to achieve your dream GMAT score in half the normal time. In the meantime, this is a weekly show, so please subscribe and please stay positive and stay consistent with your studies. I'll talk to you all soon.